Hello folks, this is Soul with some more Shadowlands coverage. Today we're taking a first look at what could be some of the powers that we'll be able to attach to legendary gear in the upcoming expansion. It's super important to let you know that there is still very little concrete information to go on at the moment. We're only looking at what's been data mined, and this stuff is not in test at the moment. So, quick recap. Back when Shadowlands was announced, we learned that we could craft and customize our own legendary gear and attach to them special powers. Some of these powers are throwbacks from WoW's past, like old legendary effects, artifact traits, Azerite gear, or set bonuses. A handful of these powers are going to be new, but can also be used temporarily in Torghast, the upcoming Endless Dungeon. The good old folks at WoW had posted an article detailing what's been found so far, and beware, I'm diving into game files here, all thanks to wow.tools, a site that lets you peek into and preview files as long as you know what to look for. Anyway, deep in the Shadowlands data is a specific file called Runeforge Legendary Ability. It's a database file that has been in the alpha from its earliest public builds, and very slowly grew in size until May 13th, when the database jumped from 9 possible legendary powers to a whopping 193. And it took a month for someone to find this, haha, go figure. But let's break this down. The very first power on this list, curiously enough, is Agrimar's Stride, which came from the Legion Legendary of the same name, and this provided a speed boost based on your highest secondary stat. So now we're left with 192 remaining lines, or powers. When looking at this database, we can see that for every class, and we're going to use mages as this quick example, each spec is identified along with this label, All Power, which we can safely assume these are powers that are independent from your specializations. Knowing this, these 192 lines equate to having 4 legendary powers per spec, plus 4 universal powers for each class, which all add up to 192. 16 powers for most of the classes, 20 for druids, and 12 for demon hunters. Since May 13th, this database has been updated to remove placeholders and reveal more powers. However, the list has not grown beyond 193. So now let's speculate. Based on the order of how all these lines are added up, I'm going to take a wild guess, okay? And say that everyone is going to get a kind of sort of free legendary that will include this speed boost power. Think of it like we're going to get a legendary crafting tutorial. I also anticipate that these 193 powers will not grow before Shadowlands goes live, and that it's going to expand maybe in a later content patch. 16 powers to choose from doesn't seem like very many considering the entire World of Warcraft history, but also consider that we can affix these powers to different gear slots, unlike Legion Legendary powers that were stuck on a certain piece. So for completionists and very hardcore players, they're going to be plenty busy making enough gear to suit their needs. Looking ahead, I'm very confident that we'll see more legendary powers added over time, especially once players get a chance to dive into Torghast. How we mess with powers and synergies will tell the dev team just what might be cool to take outside of the Endless Dungeon. Alright, so you've heard enough. Now let's get to identifying the powers we know of right now by going straight down the list, and I'll provide some commentary wherever I can. Before we start though, there are only a few classes that we'll be able to cover today: Death Knights, Mages, and a little peppering of Warriors. So let's get started. The universal power for everybody is Agrimar's Stride, which takes us back to the days of zipping around in Legion with this, and Sephuz's Secret, and like Bear Tartar. If I'm right, and everyone gets a chance to craft themselves a speed boost legendary, this is going to be a strong power to start with, regardless of your class or your role. Frost Mages are first on this list, starting with Slick Ice, which makes your Frostbolt faster and faster while Icy Veins is active. This might be great to pair with Thermal Void to make you a full-on ice turret cannon thing. Cold Front makes you call down a frozen orb, and in PvP it's twice as effective. This is mostly inspired from the Legion Legendary that called down a Comet Storm, so maybe this is a typo because I'd rather not mess with a frozen orb. I mean, I already suck enough as a Frost Mage, okay? Freezing Winds is a step up from the set bonus that this originated from. It helps you gain more Fingers of Frost procs and reduces the cooldown of Frozen Orb when casting Frostbolt. Finally, Glacial Fragments seems kind of new. It makes your Ice Lance have a chance to explode for AoE damage, plus additional damage if you have a Blizzard going out at the same time. Oddly enough, up next are the universal legendary powers for mages. Expanded Potential is a buff that you can get when casting your signature filler spells to make your next Hot Streak, Brain Freeze, or Clear Cast not be consumed, which is a nice gain for your sustained DPS. Disciplinary Command seems to be a passive that activates when you first cast a Frost, a Fire, and an Arcane spell within 10 seconds of each other. So if you succeed, you gain additional crit strike damage for 20 seconds, and this buff can only occur once every 30 seconds. So looking at this, yeah, no kidding, this does require a bit of practice if you want to maintain a high uptime on this buff. Grizzly Icicle makes your spells do 10% additional damage to enemies in your Frost Nova, and it no longer breaks it, so great. I'm gonna have a lot of fun getting kited by this. And Temporal Warp is a throwback to what I think was a popular Legion Legendary. It lets you have a second Bloodlust while sated, but it only provides a 15% haste buff. But keep in mind that Bloodlust-like effects have been nerfed to 30% in Shadowlands. Moving on to Fire, Fevered Incantation makes your consecutive critical strikes increase your crit strike damage by a certain number of percentage points, and this buff lasts for 6 seconds. If it's like the old artifact trait, this might fall off very quickly unless you have very high crit, and it might still only stack up to 5 times. Firestorm comes from an old set bonus that basically lets you throw out some really nasty single target or AoE damage within 5 seconds. Molten Skyfall rains a meteor on a target every 30 fireballs or pyroblasts. It basically tells you to pick this up if you want to PvP. And finally, there is Sun King's Blessing, where after using 6 hot streaks, your next pyroblast will activate combustion. Woo! Now let's take a look at arcane traits. Arcane Harmony buffs arcane missile damage, and successful hits increase the damage of your next arcane barrage, and this stacks. If it can still be stacked to a ridiculous amount like before, well, I'll let you know as soon as someone uses it against me. Arcane Bombardment should sound pretty familiar. It turns Arcane Barrage into an execute spam that you'll still only occasionally use, I bet. Siphon Storm helps to lower your downtime while increasing your damage done. Short and sweet. And Triune Ward is a weaker version of the Anima power, which normally gives all 3 of your mage barriers at full effectiveness. With this legendary power though, you still at least get all the utility of each barrier. Alright, so let's take a look at Death Knights. Starting with their universal power, Super Strain makes it so that when you apply a disease, you also apply the other diseases from the other specs. It really makes me wish Outbreak for Unholy DKs wasn't nerfed, huh? Yeah. Pheromones comes from an old talent that increases the effect on your minions while in your Death and Decay. Death's Embrace gives your AMS a wider effective range, and it turns it into a cute little heal. Grip of the Everlasting gives you a second free death grip within 3 seconds. You can potentially stack other death grip effects to drive your enemies insane. Now let's take a look at blood traits. Brennador's Might rewards good gameplay by making death strikes refund some runic power if it grants a significant heal. Crimson Rune Weapon alters the overall rotation of your Blood Death Knight, making Dancing Rune Weapon's cooldown much shorter while giving you a chance to get Bone Shield charges back up after it fades. I'm not an experienced Death Knight tank at all, but I have a feeling that this is going to be a favorite. Gorfine's Domination reduces the cooldown of your Vampiric Blood and pretty much increases your effective health. And Vampiric Aura is a nice one to pick up as a group defensive cooldown. Only 3 powers are available for Frost DKs at the moment, so cross your fingers for a favorite. In the meantime, enjoy Kultira's Favor, which grants 2 runes instead of 1, like the Legion Legendary did, and yeah, that's not going to get nerfed at all. The Frozen Tempest Azurite power has been renamed to Biting Cold, which juices up your Remorseless Winter. Absolute Zero... Really, this one's back? Good God. I don't even really have words for this one, and you guys have 1 more power to still have. Sheesh. Anyway, let's get to Warriors now, which seems to be the last class the team was working on. For their universal traits, Warriors can pick up Leaper, which gives you a stupid amount of mobility. This is going to be hilarious. Misshapen Warrior is a new power to Shadowlands that juices up your spell Reflect, and it applies it to your whole party, which makes this a really nifty group defensive. The Signet of Tormented Kings is another new power that makes your Bladestorm, Recklessness, or Avatar randomly cast the other ability, which is a little bit messed up, because Arm Spec only has access to Bladestorm, while Fury and Protection have access to 2 of the 3 listed abilities, so this is basically something that works better for Fury and Protection warriors. So far, Arms warriors get Battle Lord, which ought to speed up your button mashing between Slam and Mortal Strike considerably. Fury has nothing at the moment, but Protection warriors can pick up Thunderlord, which will make warriors monstrous when holding on to big packs. Finally, the Wall will add more utility to Shield Slam by shortening the cooldown of Shield Wall. So that's it for the powers. Now, how are we going to get access to them? So far, we don't know exactly. Maybe these powers can be bought from a vendor. Maybe they're crafted, like the Legendaries are. But let's break down how I think Legendaries are going to be crafted in Shadowlands. First, the crafting of the actual Legendary won't be done by a profession person. You will be going to the Shadow Forge, located inside Torghast, where you'll give someone a bunch of stuff and then they spit a Legendary back at you. That's pretty much the gist of it. The reagents for these come from multiple sources, including crafting professions. They can create special legendary reagents which have their own resource requirements, which could be subject to variables like rarity, daily crafting, and transmute cooldowns, and more. And then there's climbing Torghast for legendary materials, which for all I know are going to be the things that you need to buy these legendary affixes. At the moment on the alpha, obtaining legendary materials involves climbing your way through a cell block, a 6-floor romp through Torghast. Here's a hypothesis. No, not a hypothesis. Here is a wild guess on how getting materials in Torghast works and why you want to climb as high as possible. So let's say that one week you start at floor 1 and you climb your way to floor 6. Cool, congratulations. You get 10 materials at the end. But you want to jump back in for some more. You start at floor 1 again, you get to floor 6, and now you get nothing because you already picked up the reward for clearing floor 6. So instead, you start at floor 6, and then you climb to floor 12. Cool, now you get another 10 materials. And then you decide to call it a day. You don't return to Torghast until next week, when instances reset. So now it's a new week, and you decide to start at floor 12, and you climb all the way up to floor 18. At the end, you get 30 materials. So what just happened? The way I'm seeing it, every 6 floors that you climb will get you 10 materials. But if you skip floors and you successfully complete your run, you're going to get all the materials from the previous floors for that week. So if you want to climb higher, you get a little bit more, but if you make the same climb or lower, you're not going to get anything because you already picked up those rewards. That's just a guess, but it's an easy way to reward players who climb higher, but still reward players who bother climbing. Between the crafting economy and running Torghast, dev interviews guesstimated that we should be able to craft a legendary by the time raiding starts, which is to say the top players will require their teams to have a legendary by the time raiding starts. This is what we know so far, so what do you think of the powers? The number of powers, the crafting methods, the ability to obtain the crafting materials? Okay, don't worry about that because that's just a guess. At any rate, share your thoughts in a comment below. Don't forget to like the video if this information was useful, and please subscribe for more Shadowlands coverage and all things Warcraft. See you soon, folks. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.